Hi, welcome to Comes and Culture for 1/11/2019. We're up to Rocky. The movie came out in 1976, and I actually think I really like this film. It's very well made. It's a great sports film. It's sort of the quintessential boxing movie slash underdog story. Um, the thing is, I don't think it would have won Best Picture if it came out in any other year, because the movie is sort of consciously modeled on the fact that it came out in 1976, and it's really resonant in terms of how we as Americans think about ourselves. So let me bring up some trailers and some clips. See you in a second. Okay, if you've never seen Rocky, it's about a down near the luck boxer in South Philly. Who gets a 1 in a million shot at a title fight because Apollo Creed, who is the current title holder, opponent drops out, and he basically picks Rocky because of his nickname, which is the Italian Stallion, because he feels it's very flamboyant and everything like that. And then it's mostly a movie. Oh, it's actually also has a very strong love story. The most ordinary love story. It's very much like Marty. In that regard, with Rocky and Adrian falling in love and dating and everything like that, and then sort of the dramatic. And so the boxing stuff it's not the most heavily of all the sports films. It's not the most sport driven. It's much more of an interpersonal drama, and it's consciously about the American dream. It's just one of the reasons why I think it won Best Picture, because 1976, that's the bicentennial year for America. Like I said, I really like this film. It did win 3 Oscars: picture, director, and editing. It's one of my favorite films of all time, and so yeah, I think the key to the film's success is it's really character driven. For such a film about such spectacular stuff. And so Sylvester Stallone wrote the screenplay, if you didn't know that, and he also plays Rocky, of course. And this man really did put his heart and soul into the story, and it really is a character study. And this is probably one of the most memorable shots to me in the entire saga, coming up right here. And we go right there. This says everything, because he just won the fight, but he looks defeated. Because he is so on the edges of society. And a lot of people don't remember this, but he actually loses his big fight in the first film. And it's all about him earning self-respect by going the distance, but he actually does formally lose the big fight at the end of Apollo Creed. Now, this scene right here is another sort of thing. One of the things I like about this movie is the characters they're not morally perfect, and so a lot of people also don't remember this, but Rocky was actually a low-level mob enforcer, and this is him shaking down this guy for money. But of course he has a heart of gold because he was told to break this guy's thumbs. And he doesn't. He just takes some money, and I like that sort of tension. And so this film, and its writing and directing, has a really mythical quality to it, because it feels sort of, in a sense, like a 1930s Cinderella rag to riches story. And a guy being down on his luck, and he gets a 1 in a million shot, but at the same time, there's sort of a tension about how much the American dream is actually achievable, because for one thing, like again, Rocky doesn't win at the end and everything like that. And then in the next scene coming up, you'll have Apollo Creed talking about why he's gonna about the fight mechanisms and why he's gonna end up picking Rocky. And it's mainly because of empty spectacle and everything like that. And so because of this, there's a sort of a cynical undercurrent into the film around like Apollo Creed. So when, like, at the end, when he rides in to the fight as dressed up as George Washington, you kind of get that a big show, And then he gets mad at Rocky because Rocky's treating the fight as an actual fight, and it's supposed to be like we're supposed to do 3 rounds, and then you're supposed to go down, and everything like that. And I like how the movie makes sort of this cynicism and everything like that, an undercurrent. And of course, because Apollo Creed is black and Rocky is white, you get sort of the racial tensions and sort of the makeup of America, and the notion of fighting for respect, and who is the American dream for, and how much you have to fight for it, how much is attainable. And it's awful, like, interesting to see the juxtaposition between this sort of rags to riches story, but also at the end knowing that it's mostly just a matter of happenstance and luck, because Rocky gets lucky that the original opponent breaks his hand, and then he also gets lucky that Apollo Creed just thought the Italian stallion would be a good marketing gimmick, so he gets his shot not through any sort of merit or anything like that, but through mostly happenstance. And so even though, like, through the effort he goes the distance in the fight at the end, it's mostly happenstance. And so I think there's a lot of people like this movie shouts, yay, the American dream works for a lot of people, but I end up seeing it as the American dream can end up working for people if you are extremely lucky and put in an extraordinary effort. And if you actually look at the characters around Rocky, such as Paulie or Mickey, they don't get their shots, and they're sort of glom onto Rocky because of that. And it sort of makes the point that, yeah, sure, Rocky gets his shot, but most people don't. And so, like, I like that sort of tension in the story. Okay, so this scene right here is my favorite scene in all the Rocky films. It's because, of course, this is Adrian and Rocky's first date, and he's just paid the guy to let her skate for 10 minutes. And to me, this is the most ordinary love story, romantic scene in all of cinema, because he's just basically explain to her where the terms, because he's left-handed, and where the term southpaw comes from, and how he feels that means he was always passed over for fights because southpaw is mess up timing. I have no idea if that's true or not. It could be ad hoc self-rationalization, but there's something about how she is playing this as she's clearly very interested. And I love how understated and mousy her performance is throughout most of the film, because then it really contrasts when she finally blows up at Paulie, and it makes that scene where she blows up and finally asserts herself as she should really powerful. I like how because he paid the guy that they're constantly being interrupted with 7 minutes left, 4 minutes left, etc. You have this weird little gag on him dislocating his finger, and it just comes across as sort of the most ordinary, common a scene for romance. And so that's sort of the point. Rocky, the character, and Adrian, the character, aren't really special people. He's just a boxer, and she's just a pet shop owner, and they're only special in each other's eyes. And there's something absolutely wonderfully special about this scene, because of it being so ordinary. How many people have had dates where you go ice skating? I mean, I've had dates like that, and it's very, very beautiful. And then the other sort of thing is, I like, in terms of like pacing and editing scheme, is there's a lot of long takes in the first part of this movie, and this is scene's a good example of that, because eventually the editing scheme gets faster and faster, because there's a lot more cuts in the final fight, and it makes the final fight much more exciting, and it makes this stuff more poignant. So it's sort of like in Two Towers or in Zulu, where the long, slow build-up makes the big battle at the end all that more exciting, because it stands out more. So there's that. Okay, then the sort of the final sequence I want to get into a little bit, and I think it's sort of the heart of the film, is right here. This is Mickey. Mickey is a trainer, and he doesn't have the best relationship with Rocky, mainly because he disagrees with Rocky being a mob enforcer. But here he is. He's coming over to Rocky's apartment to try to convince him to train him. And there's something powerfully poignant, but also somewhat cynical about this, because they'll end up working together, but they've known each other for 6 years or something, and you get the sense this is the first time, or maybe the second time, he's been over Rocky's apartment, and he's only here to try to convince him because he has a shot at the title. And of course, for your as a trainer, that's important as well, because it puts him on the map and everything like that. And they're quite different sort of people, and this scene sort of reinforces that again and again, that they're not really sort of the same sort of person. First with like the turtle bit and everything like that, because he's basically, those are Rocky's pets, and Mickey's like, yeah, we can make them into soup, which, you know, isn't necessarily the best thing. And then he's going to eventually go into this whole story about how he never had had a shot, and how he got really cut up by another boxer using nails or whatever. And I like this sort of unflinching sort of realism in scenes like this, because even though the overall narrative is very 30s style Fantasia in a sense, the actual sort of detail and the easy naturalism of the cast, for most of the cast, Stallone's a little bit operatic, as he should be, because he's Rocky. Anyway, so this easy naturalism, I mean, it gives sort of this film a nice sort of irony to it. And because, you know, you're looking at a story which is ultimately sort of a Fantasia, but if you look at the shot like here, and you have sort of the background darkness and everything like that, it's a very sort of gritty situation, and it has a very sort of realistic feel to it. And so, like, this is going to sound funny, but one of the things that makes this apartment really feel sort of obviously real to me is if you look in the background, at some points there's like random debris of various cooking things. So like there's Clabber Girl, which is baking powder, and it's just sort of like, why the fuck is that there? But it makes it feel very much like down on their luck bachelor pad, who's, you know, a low income guy, which is exactly what Rocky is. And so even though like the central story has the fantastic elements, the irony of the film is that it treats the fantasy very realistically. And I think that also ends up commenting a little bit on the American Dream, because it's makes it seem like the American Dream is not unattainable in some ways, because Balboa is so lucky to have been picked by Creed and everything like that, and it's such a striking that you kind of get the sense that without his name, that he would never escape this little apartment. And you can imagine a slightly different version of the Rocky universe where you know, Rocky ends up having this conversation with another boxer, and he's acting exactly like Mickey here, and so it's sort of, there's the Clapper Girl, so it's sort of foreshadowing in a way what's going to happen, what would have happened, and everything like that. And there's something absolutely poignant about Burgess Meredith in this scene. He's so desperate, because he's 76, the character, and he's so tired, and he absolutely wants to sort of get his shot again, and so he's just sort of glooming onto Rocky. But that feels very cynical and sort of bad on his part, because of him not being, like, they don't have a good relationship, and it feels very, in that sense, sort of morally wrong that they end up working together, and the relationship is so sort of damaged. Eventually, it becomes okay in terms of the movie, and everything like that because of I'm not going to show it, but a little bit of a scene where Rocky just sort of yells at him indirectly and gets angry and everything like that. And there's enough right in there to move it along. Anyway, this shot right here where he puts his head up against the door is the most sort of heartbreaking shot because he's just trying to connect. But in a sense, it's a little bit too late. And then there's this great little bit of business where he forgets his hat but opens the door. Meredith does this very, very well, and it's I actually think this 10 seconds is why he was nominated for an Oscar. Everything like that. Anyway, so I actually recommend people watch the first Rocky and try to forget the other ones. I like most of the other ones, especially Rocky Balboa and Creed 1 and 2. But the first Rocky is such a great little film that's actually surprisingly complex, given that it's written by Sylvester Stallone. Anyway, see you guys tomorrow. Cubs and Culture out.